This is the Appian 19.3 Product Announce webinar. Again, my name is Malcolm Ross, VP of Product Strategy, and I'll walk you through today's content on the Appian 19.3 release. But before we begin, of course, I'd like to cover a few announcements, and most importantly, as those of you who are in the know in the Appian community know that we have our big Appian World event every spring. And of course, typically the falls in Q3 and Q4 are filled with lots of great user group activities to engage with local Appian practitioners around the entire globe. So let's kick into see what we have in store for coming up. So the first of which is coming up on October 17th, which is the Appian APAC 19 conference at the Westin in Sydney, Australia. So we're really excited to host all of our customers and partners in the Australia, New Zealand, Singapore, and other regions in the Asia Pacific theater. If you are interested in attending, go ahead and please mark that calendar date, October 17th in Sydney, Australia. And there's a quick link to the registration there at ap.pn2z4wjh9. Really look forward to having you there. And of course, it's an opportunity to not only hear what the latest features and capabilities are of the Appian platform, but also engage with Appian experts and fellow Appian practitioners from around that specific area. In addition, we have a similar session planned for November 21st, the Appian Public Sector 19 conference at the Marriott Marquis in Washington, D.C., the hub for federal government in the United States. And of course, it's going to incorporate all of our public sector customers here in the DC area and throughout the entire United States or world, so be it. And of course, if you're interested in that conference, go ahead and register at ap.pn2z3szDF is the short URL link there. And we really look forward to seeing you here. Of course, that's a local event for us. We're just outside the Washington, D.C. area, so we'll have lots of product experts and engineers available on hand to answer your questions about the future of the Appian product. And the next big one is really the Appian Europe event 19. Now, if you've attended Appian World, you know that's probably our big event every year. We have over almost 2,000 people at the Appian World event. The second largest event is Appian Europe, and that's going to be a two-day event at the Intercontinental London, the O2 Conference Center, out by Canary Wharf area. And of course, that is, as mentioned before, December 3rd to December 4th. The registration page is appian.com/Appian Europe. And that's not only going to feature, of course, product experts, content sessions, customer stories. Last year, we had a special keynote speaker who was John Cleese. And I think we've announced already our keynote speaker, but if you're interested to find out who it's going to be, check out appian.com/Appian Europe, and of course there you'll also find the registration. So really hope to see you there, along with all of our other fellow Appian practitioners and experts. But if you can't make it to those events, we do have other events planned. So this includes a Florida user group on September 19th, New York user group on October 1st, Boston user group on October 9th. The Boston user group, we have an additional women's leadership conference planned, an Appian-sponsored women's leadership conference on October 8th to go along with the Boston user group. The Mid-Atlantic user group is the one I'm most excited about because that's actually at the brand new Appian headquarters. That picture that you see there in the small circle, it's actually a picture of the Appian offices that I'm in right now. Dallas user group is October 17th, the day after. And of course, the Life Sciences and Healthcare user group, I believe it's going to be in New Wales, Pennsylvania on October 22nd, 2019. So mark your calendars. Again, these are fantastic events. They're great events to engage with the other user community. And if you ever have questions about how these user communities come together, or if you'd like to see a user group in your specific geographic area, the user groups are actually organically driven. So they're asked for and driven by our customers themselves. Often, many of these are actually hosted at our customer locations. Now, Appian comes into play here in that we would love to have you sponsor these. So we offer to pay for the facilities if necessary. We're happy to cater lunch if necessary. But really, it's about organically driven activity. So if you'd like to figure out if you can organize a user group in your specific geographic area, encourage you to talk about it with your Appian account executive, your customer success managers, or your partner managers. We'd love to help you organize a user group in your geographic area as well. And finally, we'd like to also invite those customers in the Chicago and New York area on December 19th. We have a special customer appreciation movie night planned. And that's going to be a premiere day screening of Star Wars, The Rise of the Skywalker. Now, I'm a longtime huge Star Wars fan. Don't think I'll probably travel to Chicago and New York just to watch the movie, but really great event to have our customers, to show our appreciation to our customers. And again, it's not a sales event. Just come in, grab some movie tickets, meet some friends, and watch the movie. And of course, if you're interested in any of these events, check out appian.com/event listing. So event-listing. Right there inside the appian.com space, event-listing, you'll not only see all of our user groups listed, you can also register for these user groups right there, as well as see other Appian events or external events that Appian is sponsoring. So if you're looking to catch Appian at a Gartner event or other types of conference, you'll see all the events that we're attending right there. Easy to connect with us while we're out there in the field. So that's it for the public announcements. Let's get right into Appian 19.3. And of course, this is the third release of 2019. It is going to be GA on August 23rd, just about next Friday. And of course, if you're unfamiliar with our naming convention, it's basically the year and the release number for that year. We typically have a release every quarter. So this is 19.3 in the third quarter. And today we're going to be covering the user, low-code developer, administrator, cloud, developer, community, AppMarket, and solutions features being introduced in August, the 19.3 release. So let's get right to it. And I like to start things out with a bang here, and I'm really excited about this feature because it's really representative of how Appian tries to make things simple, giving really kind of thoughtful effort of how you take maybe complex design patterns and reduce it down to a single click as far as enabling that. And what we've done now inside this latest release is enabled automated location capture for mobile apps. So this applies to both the iOS and Android version of Appian. It is going to be the native mobile client application, not the web interface. It allows you to easily add geolocation capture on any task form submission. It works both online and offline. So you have offline operations. If you remember earlier in an earlier release of Appian, we introduced both offline actions and offline tasks. If a user receives that offline task now, they can simply capture that form and capture the location right there. Now, of course, to control the location capture enablement on that iOS device or Android device, if you're familiar with mobile applications or mobile operating systems, you might be aware that you can actually disable or enable location capture on each of the mobile devices. Now, that's outside of the application configuration. That's part of the native operating system, both Android and iOS. But in addition, whenever we have iOS or Android mobile location capture enabled on a form, you're going to see that little banner at the very top. You'll see this scroll by very quickly, and I'm going to demo this as well. But as that comes up right there, the form records your location. So it's making sure the customer is always aware that if this form is capturing the location, they have that little banner indicating that they are being geolocated on this form submission. So how do we enable this? Again, back to why I love this design pattern is, can you check a single box? Most people can. So that's all you have to do. You simply go to the Forms tab inside of here. You'll see a new field there, Capture Location on Submission, and you just check that box. That's it. When I check that box, it will automatically add a new data output, which is actually going to introduce two brand new data types into the Appian lexicon of data structures. This includes a type bang location result and type bang location, which is going to capture the geolocation information. It's not only going to capture the geoloc information, it's also going to capture up obviously the longitude, latitude, also the altitude, as well as the horizontal and vertical accuracy of that geolocation. So it's going to give you a range to say, I know this within X meters that it's this accurate. So that's typically that circle that you see represented around a specific location, the relative accuracy of that geolocation marker. But let's go ahead and take a look at this feature in action. Let me go ahead and fire up my mobile device here. And there we go. So you see my mobile device right here. I'm on my mobile inspection form. Now I put together this quick little form as an example. I'm going to go ahead and capture my form here. So I can see that banner right up top. This form records my location when submitted. Tap here to disable the location access. I can tap there. Takes me right to settings if I want to disable that on the specific application. So the user does have the option to turn it off or on. Now if I go to I'm going to fill out my form really quickly. So let's say it's a parking lot. Today's the inspection date. I need to upload some images. Let's go ahead and see. You can take a look at my setup here when I do these webinars. Got my screen over there, speaker notes, view, and of course a view of the new Appian office. We'll go ahead and take that picture. There we go. Go ahead and use that photo. And go ahead and say there is an issue here. There we go. Hit submit. And that's going to go ahead and record the geolocation information behind the scenes. Now to show this, I go ahead and display a new task. You can see my little notifications coming up there. Go ahead and do my task, display inspection information. There's an image I just took, and of course, in this example, I decided to take the location information, and actually show that inside the Google Maps UI component. So go ahead and click on that and say, hey, there's an issue here, which is that description I just captured. So again, nice way to pair that Google Maps UI component plugin along with a location capture to show the exact location of a specific environment. And here you can see there's the Appian office, and you can see exactly where my office is inside the new office building. Go ahead and submit that, and we're done. So again, let's take a look at how we actually enable this. So if I go to the Appian 19.3 proc release, I'm going to go to the process modeler where we have mobile location capture and see how we actually built that little demonstration. So inside the process modeler, again, you just go to any user input form. Very straightforward. Simply double click on that user input form, click on the Forms tab, and you're going to see this new button object right here. Simply check that box, capture location on submission. This is going to be checked by default off. So if you do want to enable this, you need to go into your environment and turn that on across the entire environment. And when that submits, then it's going to capture that new data output. So if I go to my data output, that's going to enable these new parameters right here called submission location. And that has a sub data type called location. And there you see the latitude, longitude, altitude, and accuracy information being captured. And of course, I simply, for this example, I went ahead and just enabled that right here. Go to my forms, edit interface, and inside here, I took in that location and capture information. There's my incident location map that I was just showing as far as the configuration. And we actually took then those map markers and mapped the longitude, latitude, and the configuration of that specific map inside there. So very straightforward, easy to implement across the environment. So let's go back to the other user features being introduced in Appian 19.3. And the next one is not really a user feature, but I put it here anyways because it complemented the geolocation capabilities. But we're introducing a new function here called abang distance between. Abang distance between is going to take the start Latin long of a location and the end Latin long of a location, and it will calculate the distance in meters by tracing a line between the two locations that follows the curvature of the Earth and measuring the length of the resulting arc. So it does accommodate the roundness of the Earth, we'll say. And of course, why this feature is valuable is I could do things like dynamic task routing based on the field service personnel who's closest to a specific incident location. So I can capture the lat long of a specific location. I can capture the lat long of a specific employee, identify which employee is closest in direct meters to a specific location, and assign the task to that person. It's just maybe one potential use case of application of this function. So going on then, we also have a new interface for controlling the bar and column mix, min and max. So this applied actually to the line one line chart in the previous release, but now it's also available in bar and column. They all support setting a minimum maximum y-axis display values. So how you configure this, simply drag and drop a column or bar chart into the field or use the expression language if you so choose. You'll see two new parameters for setting the min and max, and you see those represented right here. Pretty straightforward, allows you to isolate specific ranges inside the visualization of that bar chart or column chart. In addition, we have a brand new reporting component being introduced called the abang gauge field. This new gauge component, of course, allows you to display the measurement of percentage of completeness inside a specific report element. Now, in addition to this, it also includes a primary text and secondary text. So the primary text is that larger text configuration where you see 61%, and the secondary text is that smaller configuration, so the smaller text. So it allows you to have a nice display of contextual display of what this gauge is about inside the center of the gauge. It looks really beautiful. And of course, you can set the custom color code. So you can choose any color you want, a hexadecimal code, or choose some of our standard colors. And then it also has three size options, small, medium, and large, and also alignment options, start, center, and end. In addition, going on to the end user capabilities, we have new record type styling and navigation, which is going to affect all end users in the Tempo environment. Now, it's important to understand that this does only apply to Tempo, not to your site's configurations. And second, this does fully replace the record type list view that when you click on records, you saw before the 19.3 release. So now in 19.3, there's a number of new feature capabilities, some of which will come out of the box. Those include the record type search will become out of the box with no additional configuration on your part. Then the second of which is the migration from the list view to the card view. So the card view is what you see here as an example. Now you'll no longer have the list view option, and now you have the card view. And then also the card view supports up to 200 record types by default. rather than the 100 record types which the list view supported prior to 19.3. Finally, the final option does require some configuration on your part. So if you go into the record type design experience, you'll notice that there's two new configurations. The first of which is setting a record type icon. So now you can configure the specific icon, rather have that long list of, we'll say, file drawers to represent records. You can choose the icon that you wish to represent a specific object. And then second, you can also control the color code. Now, do not recommend you choose the colors that I chose because purple does not really go well with that brown orange on the orders, but just showing the example that you do have that ability to control all the colors inside all the record type configurations now. And again, this does only apply to Tempo. Even in sites, you do have the option to control a custom navigation icon in the navigation menu that might navigate to a record type. That is still a separate configuration, so you can still choose a different navigational icon in sites navigation to represent a record than maybe is inside the Tempo experience. Next, records in actions in dialogues. So there's two areas where we have actions in related to records. The first of which is a list action when I'm looking at a list of all the different records inside a record type. The second of which is a related action to a specific record. All these now open up in a dialog window, which is really valuable, of course. With dialogs, you'll be able to open, of course, more quickly into the complete the action. So it actually improves the load time of getting into those actions, and with the ability to close the window and maintain the context of the navigation you might have had in that record view, or maybe the filtering options you had inside that record type list. So now you can safely work on dynamic record views without having to navigate away from your current activity. Really nice feature to improve the productivity of the environment. And next, also for styling controls, we're introducing some more column widths. So we had before narrow, medium, and wide, introducing 4 new width controls, one of which is extra narrow, which we see represented here on the left-hand side. When I change this from narrow to extra narrow, it's specifically optimized to easily lay out icons in a row. So you might want to use these icons as navigational cues on the right-hand or left-hand side. Now the column width makes it really easy to have a nice, tight navigational cue control inside your overall layouts. Narrow plus is just a little bit extra than wider than narrow. Medium plus the same with medium, and of course wide plus gives you kind of more maximum wideness. So I might want to pair like a narrow or narrow plus with like a wide plus, for example, to have a nice master control view, a master navigation with content detail on the right or left. And also we're introducing more rich text sizes, specifically on the larger side. So now we have a medium plus, large plus, and extra large size options. You'll see these navigational options right there in the interface designer. If I choose extra large, I can now choose to make things really big and noticeable to highlight specific content as I'm designing an interface. And finally, on styling, we also include the ability to toggle the border on card layouts. Again, this is a more subtle cue that adds extra callouts to cards to adjust to better match styling with dark colors. So simple checkbox control here, I simply turn off and on show border, and that's going to remove the border of specific card layouts. If I wanted to blend more into the overall interface, I can turn off that border. If I want to call attention to it a little more strongly, just turn on that show border. It has a little bit more delineation between the other content in the interface when I have that border. And that's it for end user. We're going to jump into now the low-code developer section for the 19.3 release. And the first of which is a simple improvement to the interface designer for improving rich text design. So this allows you to easily and visually configure web links and images in rich text. So very simple controls. If you're familiar with the 19.2, 19.1 release, we introduced the idea of having a simple rich text design rather than writing complex script logic to control the rich text styling. So now if you want to add things like links to specific elements, just highlight the text, click on the link action, and you have that common dialog window where I define the text and the link control. Same thing with images. If I want to add an image, just click on the image icon. It gives a nice dialog to easily add an image to the overall rich text environment. Going back to records, though, we've also introduced a new intuitive record type design experience. So if you've ever built a record type, you might be familiar with that very long kind of configuration pane. Now that long configuration pane has been delineated across the core elements, such as the source and default filters. How do I want to fetch the data from a backend data source? The list view, how do I want to configure my display of the objects inside the record? The user filters, so which filters do I want to enable the users to have to filter the content inside the list. The views, so all the different ways I want to visualize that content, and then its relationship to processes. So how do I stitch together the specific record to the related actions inside the environment? And also a little quicker access to the record type performance monitoring. So if you're familiar with 19.1 and 2, we introduced a lot of monitoring features that record the performance of record type lists, so how well those are rendering, as well as the record type view performance. So it gives you detailed views of exactly what your end users are experiencing when actually using that record type as far as rendering times. We're also introducing a new feature to populate your grids with rules. So again, back to 19.2, 19.1, we've been on a mission to make it very easy to build grid structures in the Appian environment if I want to display like spreadsheets of data. So in 19.2, we introduced things like the query editor inside the grid view, which allows you to easily launch the query editor while you're inside the interface designer, or choose maybe specific variables or use expressions. Now, many of the design patterns that our customers have been using is to build those query rules in separate rules. So now you have the option to easily select the rule that you want to actually populate the data for a grid. Now, the cool feature about this is that when I choose the rule and populate it, it automatically builds all the column structures for me. So I don't have to go to the pain of defining the data and then define the columns. It's going to automatically read the output of that rule. If it's a data subset with paging information, it'll analyze all the column structures and build the columns for me. Let's go back and take a look at some of these features. I always like to do some live demo here. So the first one I think we talked about was record type design, of course. Let's go ahead and see. I think if I go to my all objects view, I probably have a record type here. Actually, there was one right there in my 19.3. Go to requests. And of course, some of the new things here, when you launch a new record type designer, you have that nice intuitive layout as we saw before. Same thing as before, I have those default filters. I have the list view. I have some here in the properties pane. The properties pane where I define the name of this record type. This is also where I define the icon for which I want to represent this, as well as the hexadecimal code color. So important to know that if you don't see that configuration, it's right there in the properties pane for name, next to name and plural name for that record. Now, of course, as well, that performance view, we introduced it before, but it's a really valuable feature to give performance feedback to the developers to show exactly how well that record list, as I see right here, is performing. So average render time is about 2.247 seconds. Or if I want to see like specific views, like the record summary view, I can load up a specific record inside of here, say this one request, and it's going to show me a performance rendering of that inside the environment. So there it is, and shows me to render this record against that specific data points, taking about 4 seconds. I can go ahead and drill and define the exact issues across that entire rendering if I so choose. So of course, going back to that the discussion about populating your grids with rules, let's go ahead and see that very quickly by kick open a new interface. Call it Demo Grid. And as a reminder, we do have two grid structures inside of the Appian product. There is the editable grid, which is really a layout of custom controls. And then we have the read-only grid, which is really kind of a true grid structure of just showing a grid of data. So this only does apply to the read-only grid. As I drag and drop the read-only grid here, you see that new intuitive controls on the right-hand side to choose how I want to populate the grid. So this is introduced again in 19.1 and 2 to have these much easier ways of controlling the entire grid layout. But again, we can derive a lot of knowledge about this grid structure by just reading the data source. So if I come to the rule and type the word customer, it's going to say, well, which rule do I want to choose? My get customer. Now it automatically detects, well, this rule requires these following inputs. I can go and populate those inputs and say, I'm just going to hard code the customer number 1. Grab the service request for that customer, and now I see all the data laid out for me. So again, all the columns got built for me automatically. If I want to start removing columns, I simply go to these and start hitting that delete option to remove specific columns from my list. So much easier to start building grid structures using any data source in the Appian environment. These rules can be populated from an integration rule coming from like Salesforce or other backend systems or a relational database. Easy to lay that out inside the environment now. So going on, let's take a look at the next around integration. So I just mentioned Salesforce, but we're really happy to announce in 19.3, we also have Microsoft Dynamics coming online. So Microsoft Dynamics is a no-code integration similar to the realm of Salesforce, which allows you to do full CRUD across Dynamics entities, creating, reading list entities, updating entities, deleting, and describing those entity structures across Microsoft Dynamics. Let's go ahead and take a look at this very quickly. I need to make sure I'm logged out on my other environment. So I'm going to go to my SharePoint system here. Looks like I am still logged into SharePoint. I'm going to go ahead and log out of SharePoint so I don't get credential issues. Sign out. And let's go to my design experience. So I'm going to go to my Dynamics connected system. Just to step back, of course, Microsoft Dynamics does support multiple authentication types. As you go to connected systems, you're going to see Dynamics listed twice here. One is via authorization code and one is via client credentials. So client credentials allows a user to use their specific credentials in interacting with Microsoft Dynamics. So again, if you want to maintain the security structure they set up in Dynamics to make sure a user is not bypassing security by having a generic authorization code, I encourage you to use the client credentials grant. And that's what we have right here configured. So if I go to my Dynamics connected system, you can see it's going to prompt me for, of course, my OAuth credentials here, which is going to have the instance URL, application client ID, directory tenant ID, which is all unique, and of course my secret password. Go ahead and hit authorize again, and this is going to be that client-specific credentials. So here I'm going to authorize as my specific account to this Dynamics environment. Hit done authorizing, just like this, and now I have a connection between Appian and the Microsoft Dynamics environment. So let's use this in a new integration. Now, the goal for each of our no-code integrations is essentially to be able to set up an integration without ever having to refer to the API documentation of that vendor. And I think we've done another great job here. So let's go ahead and say I want to maybe list entity records. I want to get a list of objects inside Dynamics. I want to get the product list from Dynamics. Just like this, hit create. So again, I just had a simple drop down of all the different operations I could perform. Now I have a listing of all the entities, so Appian automatically goes and discovers all the entities across the entire system. I can go ahead and just type the word, say, product, and find that product entity inside the Microsoft Dynamics. And this is probably the area that gets the most kind of codey, we'll say. So I can hit a test really quick and see that I have a listing now of all my products. That integration is successful. Automatically translated that from a Dynamics JSON string to an Appian data dictionary, so I can work with it really easily. But of course, I want to maybe filter this list. And Microsoft just loves their OData, right? So in order to filter this list, I need to learn a little bit of OData configuration. So in this, we give, of course, those tips down below of how to configure OData filter queries. So I just want to do filter. And the filter I want to apply here is one of my specific columns. I'm going to take maybe, I think there's here, sample price. Let's go ahead and take that one. And if you know your OData configuration, LT stands for less than, and let's say less than, say, $300. Go ahead and hit test request. You can see automatically filtered out. I don't have that 700 anymore, and now filtered out to 300. So the only challenge, again, working with the Microsoft Dynamics is just the nature of Dynamics is it really does rely on awareness of OData. So OData is an open data kind of protocol standard for querying and working with data in these type of structures. So there's lots of public documentation there about how to write OData strings inside the environment. And of course, that's Microsoft Dynamics. We also have another one. You probably saw me allude to it a little bit already when I talked about logging out SharePoint. So we also are introducing a no-code integration to Microsoft SharePoint. And of course, this is access via authorization code or client credential, just like before, so it can maintain those individual user permissions of the SharePoint system, as well as providing full control over folder and document operations, uploading, downloading files, accessing metadata, managing folders. So let's go and take a look at this one as well. Go over to my SharePoint system. In my SharePoint configuration, I'm using authorization code instead of client credentials. So again, you see a little bit different behavior here. Instead of authorize again, I simply have test connection. That test connection successful, didn't prompt me to actually re-authenticate with SharePoint. But with that though, let's go to my SharePoint environment just so I can see what's going on. And it's going to prompt me, I need to log into different accounts because I have different logins for my Dynamics or SharePoint system. So 1 second, signed out. And there's my SharePoint login, just like this. So there we go. Now we're in a cloud-based SharePoint environment coming down from Office 365. And I'm just going to go ahead and look at this one folder called a usability test. So here I have my Documents, the root folder always in SharePoint is called shared documents. I have a subfolder called usability tests, and I want to maybe get some operations across this folder here. So let's go back over to my environment, hit use new integration. And what I want to do, maybe I want to download a file from Microsoft SharePoint and put it into Appian. Just like this. Hit create. And again, the goal of any no-code integration, I don't need to refer to the Microsoft SharePoint documentation. So simple list of all the operations I can perform. I can say provide a subsite if I so choose. And here I just want to write, you can see I've done this before, share documents, a usability test. So I just write the path for the folder I want to download from, the specific document I want. So here I want the Appian logo red. You can see that is appearing right here as far as that specific document. And then let's go back to that and then simply say, where do I want to save it? So here I have my 19.3 documents. Hit test request and done. I just grabbed that document from Microsoft SharePoint, loaded it inside the Appian environment now. And of course, with this, you see that it is returning a document ID. So to verify that it is in the Appian data store, we were going to return the output of the integration, which document object ID it is inside the environment. So very simple now to integrate with SharePoint to complement our Salesforce, all of our integrations we have now already built inside the Appian platform. So going on, a little bit more about integrations, but on the other side, we've also improved Web API creation. So now Web APIs start with templates rather than a kind of from scratch design experience. They create endpoints to your data and processes in seconds now. So this is really an important concept that when before 19.3, we introduced the idea that you need to know like the method I want to perform, like a get, push, delete action I want to actually have this Web API perform. Many times when a designer starts building, if you're not really familiar with how REST APIs work, you might not know which method to actually choose. So instead, we're going to start with prompting, well, what exactly do you want to do? Do you want to just have like a basic example, like a JSON or hello world? And you might notice right away that there is a document download and document upload action. So when I create a Web API point, get into my next slide here of data exchange with documents. Do I want to query data sources inside the Appian system, like querying a record or a data store? Do I want to write information to the Appian system? Do I want to delete something? Do I want to initiate a process? You just simply choose the template that you want to start from, and that's going to automatically build the code structure for you. So one of those also is that we now offer to upload files to Appian with the Appian Web API. So this wasn't supported before. In order to do this, you had to write a servlet plugin to the Appian system. Those plugins are now no longer necessary. You can use Web APIs to basically publish a upload point to receive binary request bodies and load those as documents inside the Appian structure. And of course, to build this, you have a simple design builder. So let's go ahead and say, go to Web APIs again. Let's go ahead and create new Web API. So we're going to publish a RESTful endpoint to the Appian system. I want to say get a document upload capabilities. So I want to go ahead and upload something. And I want to say receive document. And again, I'm going to convert binary requests to Appian documents. That's automatically checked. It's going to be a post, so automatically check the method for me. And where I want to save this in my 19.3 document folder, just like this. And the endpoint is upload document, just like that. Hit create. So again, a simple wizard just prompts you for what I need. I don't need to muck with the different methods. It knows exactly which method is going to be required for that specific type of operation. And there it is. It automatically built the template script for me to basically receive the document. And of course, I can test it right here to test my profile picture loading inside the system. And there it goes. Went ahead and uploaded that document to that document folder. So a very intuitive way now to rapidly build Web APIs for common actions across the entire Appian system. So going on, next we have, speaking of Web APIs and integrations, we also automatically handle ISO 8601 dates in JSON strings. Now this not only applies to the integration designer, which has a feature to automatically convert JSON to Appian data dictionaries, but also applies to the from JSON script function, so both areas. So this was always a challenge before because JSON has its own date and date time format. Appian has its date and date time format. Now we will automatically recognize anywhere in a JSON string where there is date and date time format. And when you apply these functions or check the box to automatically convert JSON, we will automatically convert that to the date and date time. So again, a nice usability feature for developers to rapidly kind of convert date and date time to the proper format to handle inside Appian. We could also define multi-part form data requests using expressions. So again, this applies to the integration designer. When I need to, say, format a specific request to go to a RESTful API endpoint, oftentimes that means to receive something as a multi-part form data. This means that there's multiple parts of the data which need to be maybe structured differently. I maybe have some plain text in one, I have JSON, but all needs to go over as one request. So in this case, you see my example here where I'm using the new function called abang HTTP form part. It has 3 parameters: the name of the form part, which does need to be unique for each area inside a specific integration. The content type, and typically content type is going to be auto detect, text plain, JSON, XML. You're telling the target service which format I'm going to send this data, and then the value. So of course that could be a JSON string, just a text string, or even as you see in my example here, I have toDocument, this specific document ID. So it can also send binary content inside of there and automatically shuffle that over to that target RESTful service. Now in the DevOps area, in Appian 19.1 and 19.2, we've been building on this theme of connected infrastructure. So in 19.1, we introduced the idea that each Appian system, dev, test, and prod, are connected to each other. And in 19.2, we introduced the idea that you can do a lot of diffing or comparing of versions across environments. We're happy to announce that now all version objects now support cross-environment comparison. So that means in 19.3, we introduced 3 capabilities. Decision Designer now supports cross-environment comparison. Connected Systems for integration SDK objects. We did already support cross-environment compare for RESTful-based connected systems, but not for, say, the Salesforce connector or Dynamics connector. So now those support also cross-environment comparison, as well as the integration object. And not only that, all the environments or all the objects all support comparing security configurations across environments. So I can see the different security profiles of specific elements. If I'm looking at, say, production versus dev, and someone's saying, I'm getting a security 401 error, I can actually look at the security configurations of the target system and see where the misconfiguration is without actually leaving my dev environment. Now, to show this, of course, if you haven't explored this feature, it is introduced in 19.2 with cross-environment compare. You click on that compare app, you select your target environment, and it's going to automatically detect the difference in the applications. I can select conflict detected right there, and this is the decision table example where in red and green it's highlighting what's been removed or added based on 2 different systems. So in green I can see the my current system has this configuration. In red I can see the target system has this alternative configuration inside of there. So very easy to understand the differences between any design objects inside the environment that support versioning. Now, in addition, we've continued to expand the coverage of the process model capabilities in comparing versions, specifically introducing the ability to compare process model properties and individual node comparisons. So again, there's a lot of configurations typically go into a process orchestration flow, and now pretty much all those parameters are supported in cross-environment compare or even version compare inside its own environment. So it gives you that red-green highlight of exactly what the difference is between 2 target systems. And finally, with the Appian low-code developer, I'd like to remind everyone that Appian 19.2, we introduced the concept of Appian AI. Now, Appian AI is an exclusive partnership between Appian and Google, the Google Cloud platform, where we're basically bundling in access to natural language processing, Google Translate, Google Vision, and Google Cloud Storage. And when you sign up via Appian for these free Google services, you receive up to 10 times the number of services offered in GCP in their free tier. So that's a huge amount of value being delivered to maybe add natural language processing, sentiment scoring, translation services, really powerful optical character recognition in Google Vision to your applications. And of course, this does require an addendum to your contract. So if you are interested in adding the Google AI or Appian AI services with Google to your application installation, please do contact your customer success manager, partner manager, or Appian account executive that can facilitate with getting those contracts in place. It's not an additional fee at all, simply does require an addendum to your existing contract to sign up for these services. So that's it for a low-code developer. We're going to transition now over to the administrative features of Appian and simply talk first about SAML. So really excited to announce this feature. It's been in demand for those configuring SAML authentication, that we now automatically sync profiles and group memberships at SAML sign-in. So this means that when a user logs into the Appian system, we'll basically implement the joiner, leaver type and move methods to ensure that we make sure the user is in the right group structures when synchronizing with SAML. As well, if you have custom attributes on user profiles, we will sync all those attributes over, such as phone number, geographic address location, custom extensions to profile data. We'll make sure we sync all that data over between the two systems. Now, if you're interested in implementing this, of course, you just go to the admin console in the authentication tab, click on SAML, a single checkbox right there to implement the synchronization of Appian group memberships, and then that's where you map the attributes between the two systems. In addition, on the Appian admin console, we now have an option also to enable a display banner on every page of the Appian system. Now, why this is useful is multiple purposes. Some of our customers have systems maybe with sensitive data, such as a government facility with secret data. You want to make sure that when a user is navigating those sites, that they receive a banner notification saying the content in this site is sensitive. Please maintain such protocol to maintain the security of this information. So this allows you a single configuration to enable this across all your environments. Another very useful implementation of this is to make sure your developers know the difference between dev, test, and prod. I'm not sure if you've experienced this yourself, but when you have the same styling across all your environments, sometimes you forget if you're working on dev or test. Let's go ahead and see how we enable this inside the admin console. Go ahead and just go to my admin console right here. In the very first tab under branding, you're going to see a new option here that says display site-wide banner, just like this. And I'm going to say you are on a dev server, just like this. And I want to set that to, say, the banner color to hot pink, and I want the text color to be white. Hit save changes, just like this. If I go back to my dev environment, now I have that indication at all times in every interface, so it's going to apply to sites, tempo, admin console, design time experience. Anywhere you see the Appian product, you're going to see this banner appear now inside the environment. So you can say like Web API Designer here, you're going to see that I'm on the dev server. So really nice cue for developers to know where they're developing, as well as for end users to know if they're working on environments with sensitive data. And since I not want to enable a hot pink banner across all my sites, let's go ahead and turn that off to continue the demonstrations here. Just like that, uncheck, and now that banner is gone. Next on the admin console area, we also have automatic cleanup enabled for exporting export packages. So as you build up your application designs in your dev and test servers, many times you export content as an application package for migration to another environment. As these content build up, they could just use unnecessarily lots of storage on your document management system. So we now have an option to say automatically clean this stuff up. You can check a box inside the data retention configuration on the system area, check that box, and then automatically set it by default. It will be set to 30 days. Of course, you can configure this to something of your taste, 30, 60, 90, whatever, how many days. If an export package is longer than that, it will automatically delete that from the system. Also, we've maintained rule performance and import history across upgrades and patches. So this was an issue in 19.2 and earlier. Whenever I upgrade the system, my rule performance data will be reset to represent the current version. Now we've maintained rule performance and import history data across upgrades and patches, so you can see the information in a continuous basis, as well as even compare performance before and after upgrades. So if there is a performance gain to, say, implementing 19.3 over 19.2, you can see that very clearly in your rule execution performance. And then finally, we also introduce alternative text on logos for accessibility. So this is things like the Web Content Accessibility Guidelines or Section 508, when I want to make sure that screen readers can properly read tags or text tags on images. One specific image we didn't yet have a text tag on was the logo. This applies not only to the Tempo default logo for the login page as well as the Tempo environment, but also applies to the sites configuration. So in sites, you configure a different logo than the overall environment. You also now have a text configuration for screen readers to have a screen reader read the text label as a screen reader navigates over that. And finally, moving on to Appian Cloud, a few important updates. And the most important one here is the enhanced business continuity offering. So a lot of our customers are already using and enjoying the Appian HA configuration, which gives you a hot replication inside a specific region. So we're going to triple replicate the full application stack and give you a 1 minute RPO, 15-minute RTO kind of commitment to that high availability offering. Now we've increased this offering with additional value that you can sign up for separately called Enhanced Business Continuity. What this does specifically is gives you a production site backup stored in a secondary geographic location within the United States. So that means if I have, say, an Appian HA configuration on the East Coast of the United States, I have triple redundancy, say, of across data centers of my entire environment, but that's all in, say, the Virginia area. We can enhance that by adding business continuity, have a backup applied to, say, a West Coast California data center in the event that, say, a major solar flare occurs and wipes out power across the entire eastern seaboard. We're going to give you a 4-hour RPO for this enhanced business continuity to restore from a backup from a region-wide failure. So again, that would be an entire region, and describe that again, like the entire mid-Atlantic region of the United States loses power, causing a data center failure across 3 redundant data centers. Then we can restore that from a availability environment on the West Coast of the United States instead of the East Coast. So this is additional to existing backup policy, needs to be contracted separately, and is available to premier support customers in the United States, but not yet available for our GovCloud customers. For our GovCloud customers, though, we are happy to introduce a brand new region on US East, as well as brand new regions for international customers across Mumbai, Seoul, and Stockholm. And then finally, for our GovCloud customers, we are offering up to 9x file upload speed improvements. Now, this is not something you just sign up for. It's by default. It just improves the file upload performance of the specific network connections to those GovCloud instances. Now, we do want to say that results may vary depending on the client-specific network configuration, such as a VPN configuration, or if the bottleneck is not the network communication to the data center, but rather your own network communication out of your client environment. So results may vary depending on the specific network configuration you have, how you attach to those specific data centers. So finally, we have the developer environments, the core platform, and inside 19.3, we're happy to announce that you can now create integration SDKs that download files to Appian. So you've probably seen this already in action in my demos of Microsoft SharePoint just recently, as well as inside the Web API's capability of pushing content to the Appian system. Now you can also create integration SDKs that push content to the Appian environment. How you do this is very simple. So on the right-hand side, I have some sample Java code. This Java code is actually from one of the integration SDKs available on the AppMarket, which is the AWS S3 one, built by Sam Merrill here inside Appian. And of course, there's 3 simple things I want to do here. So I want to define the target folder. So which folder I want to save information into Appian. So I have a long variable here storing the folder ID. Next, I want to get the document from AWS S3. So I'm going to define a media input stream variable to receive that content inside. And then finally, I want to apply the download function, download to Appian. So you see that new function there, download document. I want to give it the media input stream and the folder ID, the target location. So very simple way to start getting documents from other external systems and loading inside the Appian environment. Now, speaking of integration SDK, a few highlights of how these get deployed on the community and AppMarket. First, I'd like to talk a little about RPA Community Areas. So RPA is becoming increasingly popular as an integration point and complement to the Appian platform. And we're happy to announce that there's going to be a dedicated discussions area on the Appian community for RPA. So if you go to discussions on community right now, you'll see it. And we encourage you, if you have specific questions about Blue Prism, Automation Anywhere, UiPath, or other RPA platforms working with the Appian platform, feel free to offer those right there. We're happy to start collaborating with you on those specific RPA and Appian implementations. We're also going to be introducing a number of RPA content elements to the community environment to make sure people are aware of the different offerings, integrations we provide with the Appian platform. Now, going back to the integration SDK, I'd also really like to thank everyone who's been contributing to this over the past 4 months. So we introduced this in about the 19.1 release, had a lot of announcements in 19.2, and that effort has continued throughout today. So right now we have over 40 plus listings built on the integration SDK available. Thank you all for those who have participated. Many of them are partners and even individual contributors to the environment. So I want to highlight 4 specific ones that just came online over the past quarter. The first of which is a contribution by one of our leading professional services partners, Vuram, who provided a range slider component. This is a free plugin which allows you, say, define a range of data for saving inside of Appian UI. Another important professional services partner of ours, Prosensol, who introduced a paid user component for BPoint field. This allows you to integrate payment processing from BPoint into the Appian UI. Another one from a prolific contributor to the Appian AppMarket, Appsino, who's introduced entity recognition. This allows you to define specific content inside a specific text string. And then finally, individual contribution from Henry Chandra, which is the Advam payment gateway. Now, this is a free component on the application marketplace, but does require a subscription to the Advam payment service. So if you'd like to add payment processing to the Appian environment, you have 2 options now from Prosensol and from Advam, as well as to take a look at, I know I could do a demo now of the range slider and the recognition component because those are free. So I'm going to go ahead and pop over, take a look at those. So again, I also want to highlight this. I think Vuram did a great job on this, and so did Appsino. And it really represents what we want to see as far as the implementation of a specific UI component. So first, of course, we don't offer range slider components. This is a nice contribution, complements the overall Appian user experience really well, allows me to define a specific range of data that I might want to filter other content on. So you can see right there, it's filtering that content. My range values are 28 to 69, saving that value right here. I'm just showing the first range value right there. Now, why I really like this component from Vuram is that its configurations are really simple. If I wanted to find like a min and max range, really simple, just like this, I can define that very quickly to define that range. Simple configurations. If I want to have a single selection, I can just do this, enable double or single selection, just like that. Hide the selector label if I so choose. And of course, configure the color, very easy to say, make that a custom color. And then the range slider values, easily map that to a specific process variable to save into as well. So really like this implementation. It's what we want to see as far as a low code nature of adding new components. And of course, as you add custom components, they're going to appear right down here at the bottom inside of here. Let's take a look at the next one from Appsino, which is that entity recognition component. So this component is a nice contribution as well. It's going to automatically recognize text inside of an environment. So if I go to my entity recognition control here, again, if I want to add it, simply add it for the AppMarket plugins. It becomes a new drag and drop element inside the environment, just like this. As I click on the entity recognition, what we love to see again is simple configurations, such as what is the text I want to input? So simply easily mapping that to a local variable or a rule input. And then how I want to save the information that's selected. So here, if I want to do the entity JSON, this is now a great example. When you do have more advanced configurations like this example, it's always really recommended to provide kind of recommendations inside the documentation. So when a developer goes to the description of that specific parameter, they see nice, rich documentation, a coding example that they can simply copy and paste and put into their text string right here. So let's go ahead and change this to say location Tysons, which is our new corporate headquarters location. And there you see working right away that I've added Appian. It's identified as an organization and Tysons is a location. So this allows you to recognize specific text elements using these keywords in the JSON string. If I want to store these, then I can very quickly add and say I want to cache these values and remember those as specific object definitions in that text string. So going back, again, thanks for those contributions from all those contributors, as well as all the people who have contributed over the past several months. Talk a little bit more about this. Submissions to know before you load code. We really encourage all of our contributors to get pre-approval on the next app or plugin idea. So you can do that by simply going to the submissions area in your Appian Community Forum environment, select get pre-approval right there. What we're looking for in pre-approval is things like this. No replacements. Components must not duplicate or replace standard Appian component functionality. No composites. Don't try not duplicate or replace functionality otherwise created by Appian environment. So no full page applications. We don't want you to just override the entire Appian interface. We want you to complement the Appian interface. and no navigation away from the Appian UI as well. So there's a high-level guidelines, but if you're ever wondering in your design idea if you will run afoul of these, again, submit that pre-approval request. We'll be happy to review it before you actually code anything. Then finally, some tips for submitting to the application marketplace. We do appreciate you to provide business context for the use case. Provide a sample application. It really helps us, to understand and to test those. Share testing credentials if there's a connected system to an external environment. Test on various browsers and devices before you send to us. And use the Appian Interface Designer to test on various form factors as well. We do test everything. We do review the code. So we are actually looking at all the submissions, full applications, and integration SDK. So it really helps us work through the application marketplace and get that listing more quickly to meet your specific needs. Finally, last few minutes here, I want to talk a little bit about solutions, and we have some important announcements. The first one around is Appian Intelligent Contact Center. We took on this challenge in 2018 to conquer exactly this, what I call the agent desktop disaster. What we saw across a lot of call centers was screens everywhere, sticky notes everywhere, really confusing user experiences, long ramp-up times to get your agents productive. And what we set upon doing is try to provide a seamless intelligent contact center experience, which combines Appian's leading case management capabilities with the latest communication platforms, such as Twilio and Genesys and other common communication systems. And with that, every single release since, we've been iteratively improving this experience. And now with the 19.3 release, for both Twilio and Genesys, we now support outbound calling. So this is an embedded dial pad with keyboard support, supports country code prefix, as well as setting your own custom caller ID. So this allows for those use cases right into outbound calling from the Appian system. It is a native SAML component for both Genesys and Twilio, allows you to automatically populate, say, the phone number. So maybe a user clicks on a specific user record, and then populates a phone number right there, and automatically calls the customer just like that, all inside the nice, seamless Appian UI. In addition, we also introduced the features for ICC to listen and join in for managers. So if I have an active communication going on, I can see there's an active interaction going on. I can click on that listen button and actually hear the conversation right inside my Appian UI, and also in that monitoring or join the conversation, start talking as well. And also enhancing the call transfer and log verification. So this simply allows us to log in more detail when a call is transferred, who it transferred to, reason for transferred, and the verification steps taken to verify a caller's identity before proceeding with a specific case resolution. And also in Appian 19.2, we introduced the Robotic Workforce Manager. Another big challenge that we saw out there is RPA is really popular adoption strategy with an Appian platform. And we found a great opportunity to align that by offering a deployment management lifecycle, control center, and case management. There's a brand new version of the Appian Robotic Workforce Manager available in the software download section. If you're a partner, I believe you can go download that. But if you're a customer, you also can contract that with your account executive to see how this can complement your RPA initiatives. Typically what it does, it's going to apply deployment management lifecycle. So it's going to measure and track the ROI of your automations, establish a center of excellence for enterprise-wide governance on your robots. So we'll expand the automation program and build a large backlog of potential RPA actions. Once you have those implemented, it's going to give you a control center to empower business to start and schedule RPA processes with proactive monitoring, alerting for robots to improve robot utilization. And then finally, to handle case exceptions. Your robots do sometimes fail, so it's going to handle those exceptions, get a human-in-the-loop activity using the Appian BPM capabilities for a seamless collaborative experience between bots and people. We do have an opportunity for everyone on the call to earn $25 by submitting a review on Appian. So Gartner is nicely sponsoring this, and we'll provide the money directly. But if you go over to that URL, ap.pn 2z7tlsl2, or ls2 rather, it is a free sign up, so you do not need to be a Gartner subscriber. Anyone can come in with our corporate email or LinkedIn login and go and submit a review on Appian. And when you submit the review, Gartner is going to thank you by giving you a $25 gift card reward. And of course, with that, really appreciate the positive reviews. As you can see, we're doing really great with over 100 reviews in just high productivity application platform as a service, as well as coverage areas in BPM, contact center, all the different areas that Appian is applied. Thanks, everyone, and look forward to seeing you at the next product announcement webinar.